about everybody's got a cup of coffee if they want one. I've been doing these throughout the area in different ways, and we haven't really, there's no form for how we've done them. Some have been, I actually, the first one we did, well first, before I say anything else, I'd like to thank the town for giving me the space for a little bit, and then thank my staff. Annie Kirkpatrick, who's my constituent services director, works out of the Pittsfield office, organizes all of these throughout the district. Annie's been a big help, and then Ruthie, who's our intern from Miss Hall's, has been helping out a lot, and she even brought me into Miss Hall's yesterday for a grilling there before a classroom, which was a lot of fun, although they were disappointed to find out that I don't control the Berkshire Mall, although they were happy to hear the road's getting fixed. I think having done these for a little bit now, first, the reason why we do these, my district's, as many of you probably know, 48 communities. It's all the 32 communities in Berkshire County. It stretches all the way over in Franklin County to Charlemont, Heath, Hawley, Rowe, Monroe, Conway, Ashfield, and Franklin counties, and then all the way down to Huntington in Hampshire County, over to Williamsburg. So I have a little bit of an area to cover. And one of the things we've tried to do is, obviously about probably about 35% of the population, 40% of the voters in the district live in Pittsfield. And there is, rightfully so, sometimes consternation that the Berkshires are Pittsfield and everything else, or that the district is Pittsfield and everything else. And I, having grown up in Pittsfield, understand that there could be an inclination to just focus on the issues in that city and not get outside of it. So I'm trying to do my best to avoid just sitting in Pittsfield and working on those issues and getting outside of that urban area and get to every corner of the district. We sort of broke down the district into really 5 sections: the Franklin Hill Towns, Hampshire Hill Towns, North and South Berkshire County, and then the areas outside of Pittsfield and Central Berkshire County, and have sort of rotated one of these coffee and conversations each month in one of those areas in hopes of getting out there. We've tried them at different times and different settings. We haven't figured out what works best just yet. Sometimes it has been a steady stream of people with sort of their own in particular concerns, and sometimes it's been a policy discussion. Really it's going to be free form. I figured I'd start with just a little bit about what we're facing right now in the state, and some of the issues I think will probably be on the front burner over the next at least 6 to 12 months. And then we can get into a free-form discussion. And if you have any personal issues that you don't want to talk about publicly, but you would like to address if it's a case or something, Annie and I can sit with you after the fact and go through some of those as well. And since I know the League of Women Voters is recording here today, I would say anybody who couldn't make it here today, if you have the internet, and if you don't, we're working on it. But if you do, don't hesitate to visit my website or write me an email if you have a question at senatordowning.com. I have a Facebook page, which apparently, well, we keep an eye on it. And, don't hesitate to sign up. I at the beginning of each day give a sort of brief synopsis of what I'm up to, and if there's an issue that I think warrants a lot of discussion publicly, I like to write a little note on there for people to be able to see. We also have a sign up here for my weekly email address. And so, as many of you may have read, committee assignments have come out in the legislature. They were delayed a little bit because there was a change in leadership between Speaker DeMacy and now Speaker DeLeo. The reason that slows things down in the Senate is because the committees that we serve on largely are joint committees. They're committees that are, for the most part, comprised of 10 House members, 5 Senate members. I am the Senate co-chair of the Revenue Committee, so the committee that will handle any and all tax proposals that come before the legislature this year. So we will handle proposals to allow cities and towns to levy an additional meals or lodging tax. We'll handle partially with the policy committees that handle them as well, the gas tax proposal, the telecommunications property tax proposal, and several other proposals as well. and obviously in a year where we see a structural deficit of about $3 billion in the state, meaning that if you look at just the state budget that we had last year and we try and just simply do that again this year, there is the revenues that we would need to come in to meet that need are $3 billion behind projections for what would be needed just to do a maintenance budget this year. So we will have our work cut out before us. That being said, we obviously have the federal stimulus coming down, and all of us in the legislature will be working to make sure that the needs of our communities are met through that stimulus, and that the goals that President Obama and Vice President Biden set forth in that stimulus are met with the projects that we support locally. Within the legislature, it seems that there is sort of broad unanimity around three priorities at least to start the term. Sort of the overarching priority for everything is trying to manage the state's finances. I think that that's almost beyond a policy priority. It's an omnipresent priority where we see it every single day, whether we're talking to advocates for certain programs or whether we have financial experts, which it seems they proliferate day by day these days, but financial experts coming in telling us what to expect in the next 6 months, the next 12 months, and we try and balance those out. But the three priorities seems to be wide sweeping transportation reform, ethics reform, and pension reform. And you will notice the stream of reform throughout all those. Not that there isn't a bad time to do reform, but especially when you have no money, it is a time when you can get everyone to agree that it's a good time to reform. When it comes to transportation reform, many of you have probably read in the paper or will read in the paper the governor is coming out with his transportation reform proposal this week, or actually today at 1 p.m., where he plans on calling for a 19-cent raise in the gas tax along with a series of reforms. We in the Senate have said that we believe before you talk about the revenue side of things, before you talk about financing for our roads and bridges and transportation infrastructure, that we absolutely have to reform the agencies that we have in place. Right now there are 3 agencies that manage roads and bridges in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with state support. If you count Massport, which manages the Tobin Bridge, you actually have 4, but 3 that have state support to do so. Mass Highway Department, Mass Turnpike Authority, and the Department of Conservation and Recreation. You may scratch your head and say, why the Department of Conservation and Recreation? It goes back to sort of fiefdom that was the Parkway system. If you look at Soldiers Field Road in Boston, Columbia Road in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston, Storrow Drive, Memorial Drive, all of those, and the bridges that connect them in the case of Memorial Drive and Storrow Drive, are managed by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So you have 3 bureaucracies, 3 sets of engineers, 3 legal teams, 3 planning departments, and quite frankly 3 conversations going on separate of each other when you have a system that we need to make sure is working together and talking together so that we can get the best bang for our buck. To add on to that, you have the regional transit authorities, which have been systemically underfunded for the last 15 to 20 years. But add into that, if you look at the budget of a regional transit authority today, you are actually looking at their budget. So if you were to look at their budget in the fiscal 08 budget, that's actually paying their bills for fiscal 07. That's not the budget for fiscal 08 operations. The way regional transit authorities are funded is a lag schedule. So the BRTA borrows the amount of money that they need to finance their operations for that year and then submits the receipts to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So instead of investing in new routes, instead of subsidizing fares to make them even more affordable, more attractive to people, and to provide a real alternative to using your car to other inefficient means of transportation, we are paying interest to borrow. In fact, up until last year, we weren't even, the BRTA and the RTAs as a whole weren't even borrowing with the full faith and credit of the Commonwealth. So we weren't even backing that up, and they were getting a horrible rate when they did go out and borrow. So we have given the RTAs the full faith and credit of the Commonwealth. We need to forward fund them, which would require a one-time hit to our budget where we would fund the last year and this year, but it would get us into a more sane system. And then